What's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. Good afternoon on this glorious October the 15th. Got a little bit of, I don't want to call it breaking news, but this really caught me off guard this afternoon. We're going to dive into it. If you guys are on X, you're seeing as we get closer to the trade deadline here in the National Football League, you're getting a lot of rumors starting to swirl, right? A lot of things are starting to heat up, and it came down to pike earlier today. That was the first time I noticed it on X. I want to give a shout out to Wendell. I think the last name is pronounced Ferreira. I hope I'm saying that right. I apologize if I'm not. I seen it come across a tweet from him talking about Rashan Gary trade rumors. Okay. And again, there's a lot of names that are grouped in here in terms of could these players potentially land with the San Francisco 49ers? You guys know they've got the Nick Bosa injury that they're dealing with. So they're looking to try to go on this run. They're having a pretty good start to the NFL season. So they're looking to plug that gap, to fill that gap. As you get ready to go on a playoff run if you are the 49ers. So they're probably calling around about numerous players. We're going to dive into all of it. If you guys would, before we do that YouTube stuff for me, hit like, hit subscribe. If this is your first time tuning into PTA, welcome. Thank you for making us a part of your afternoon. We're not experts here. We're not insiders. We're not media members. We are fans just like you, talking Packers on the daily. So if you're looking for that type of content, make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you click the bell icon so you're notified when we go live here in the future. Like this evening, 6 p.m. Central, we're going to be going live for Chalk Talk. That's where we break down the previous game. I'm going to be giving you the 14 most important plays from the win over the Cincinnati Bengals. We're going to do a detailed description on these plays, break down the terminology, break down the X's and O's, and give you a better understanding of what happened, why did it happen, answer a lot of the questions that many fans have after watching the TV copy as we've made 3 passes through the tape right now. And I see the chat's filling up. Hopefully everybody is having an awesome day. Appreciate y'all making us a part of your afternoon. Let's dive into it, guys. Rashan Gary trade rumors. All right, so here we go with the Rashan Gary trade rumors heating up. Let's just dive into it. Again, I want to give a shout out to Wendell over on X. It's at WENDELLFP. The 49ers are reportedly interested in Rashan Gary. He wrote an article over there. There's been numerous people reporting on this as well. Different names being mentioned, being linked to the 49ers. I've seen in the chat some people are saying receivers are being mentioned as well, maybe Romeo Doubs, things like that. Not necessarily to the Niners, but other teams, obviously. So it's we've just kind of entered that cycle of the season where things are going to heat up and get a little bit wonky, as Matt LaFleur had said before. The San Francisco 49ers are reeling from the loss of star pass rusher Nick Bosa to a season-ending knee injury, prompting the team to explore trade options to bolster their defensive line, according to, and again, the source here, and I believe Wendell also had this as well, ESPN insider, say that 3 times fast, Jeremy Fowler. One name that has surfaced is Green Bay Packers edge defender Rashan Gary. However, a trade for Gary seems highly improbable. Let's explain why, okay? Fowler reported that the Niners are actively scanning the trade market for pass rush talent, with Cincinnati Bengals Trey Hendrickson being an ideal fit if the price is right. Other potential targets include Rashan Gary of the Packers, Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb of the Dolphins, Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald of the Jets, and Arden Key of the Titans. Fowler also noted that if the Packers are unwilling to part with Gary, which seems likely, they could consider moving Kingsley Enagbare, a former starter, now in a reserve role and in the final year of his contract. We say former starter, that's a little bit iffy, right? We follow the Packers real close here. Obviously, he has started games in the past. Yes, I guess that technically makes him a former starter, but it was probably because of injury that he was in the rotation. Now, obviously, LVN is stepping up big this year. I feel like he's taking the next step. The last I checked, I want to say he was at something like 12% pressure rate. We may be able to see those numbers here in a second. But he's been hurt, right? He just hurt his foot, and we're awaiting details on that. We should actually have information today with the first injury report if it's not already out. We'll definitely cover that on the first half of PTA tonight before we dive into the tape. So with all that being said, can you part ways with Rashan Gary, right? Now, you guys know how I feel about Rashan Gary. I've been the biggest Rashan Gary stan over the last few years. I've been very vocal about it and caught a lot of heat for it. Again, I don't try to have these personal what am I trying to say here? I don't try to show favoritism because I like a player like that's my favorite player. I simply look at 3 different aspects. I look at the data. I look at the PFF grades. I go watch the tape, right? So I'm looking at the next gen stats, some of the advanced metrics, the EPA, all that good stuff. I'm watching the tape. The tape carries the most weight with me because with the tape, if you know what you're looking for, you can see, okay, here was his responsibility. Okay, he wasn't actually rushing the quarterback there. It looks like a pass rush, but he's actually playing somewhat of a spy or a contain. I take all those things into consideration. And I got to be honest with you, I don't trust PFF to take those things into consideration. So I group all three things together and try to come up with an educated guess on how a player is actually playing. That's just how I approach it. So when you look at Rashan Gary, guys, he's off to a strong start. He really is. Let me explain why Rashan Gary isn't going anywhere. In my opinion, I say he isn't going anywhere. We can't guarantee that, right? Never say never, but never, as Mike Tomlin once said, right? Rashan Gary's been a cornerstone of the Packers' defense, thriving opposite of Micah Parsons. With opposing offenses keying in on Parsons, Gary has enjoyed a breakout 2025 season, leading the team with 4.5 sacks and ranking second in 17 with 17 pressures through 5 games. Keep in mind that's PFF pressures. Again, we're cross-checking it, and you're showing 15 pressures from NFL Pro. It's important to understand all different angles. He's on pace for a career high 15 sacks. Gary has turned pressures into production, addressing a long-standing critique of his game. So when you look at the numbers, again, from NFL Pro, hopefully you guys can see this. If not, I'll try to do a good enough job of reading it off to you. He's leading the Packers with 4.5 sacks. Micah Parsons is second with 2.5. Then Devontae Wyatt, who's banged up as well, with 2 sacks. Lucas Van Ness is now up to 1.5 sacks. When you look at the quarterback pressure percentage, notice that Parsons, according to NFL Pro, is at 19.2%. Gary's at 10.7%. Now, you look at that and go, wow, that's significantly lower. Watch the tape. Watch the tape. Also, look at the stops. When you watch the tape and you see the run stop rate of Rashan Gary, you can really key in on how Jeff Hafley likes to utilize Rashan Gary. He's more of a run defender than a pass defender. He's really good at setting the edge. He's really good at bringing the ball carrier down. He's very, very gap disciplined. That's something that's come along in the last year and a half, by the way. It wasn't always the case. And he is more stout, more strong at the point of attack than Micah Parsons. That doesn't mean he's a better pass rusher or run defender than Parsons. It just simply means Gary plays with power and Parsons plays with speed. It doesn't mean that either of those guys, Rashan Gary, can't play with speed or Parsons can't play with power. It's just the strength of each of those two defenders. I think they complement each other really, really well. When you look, Rashan Gary, guys, he's got 16 stops. That leads all of our defensive linemen. The next closest one is Micah Parsons with 11 stops. And again, if you wonder what a stop is, it's when a player makes a tackle that the result is a negative play in EPA, if that makes sense, or considered a negative play for the offense on that particular play. Devontae Wyatt has 3 stops. Lucas Van Ness is up to 8, and Carl Brooks has 4. Now, of course, stack backer Edrin Cooper, that name's going to be inflated a little bit with him being a stack backer at 25. Then it's Baron Sorrell. You got 1, and that's pretty much all that made the top 10 list in terms of rated, sorted by sacks, but talking simply run stops. Rashan Gary is your best run defender on the defensive line. I know there's a portion of the fan base that absolutely loves sacks. I get it. I understand. There's nothing better than watching, I think it was Deacon Jones that came up with the term sack, right? He said he came up with that term because he said the way to describe what a stat should be called where you hit the quarterback like that, it's like you take the entire offense and you put them in a sack and you close it up and you just hit it with a baseball bat. I thought that was that's just absolutely awesome. That's how he came up with the term sack. I know it's a fun stat, and that's what you want in your pass rushers. But I'm telling you, unless you want to go back to the days of the San Francisco 49ers and Raheem Mostert running all over your ass with the running game, you've got to find a balance. The reality is the Packers are leading the league in rushing yards per game allowed with the least amount in a good way. They get the best run defense. They're 4th in the league now, 3rd or 4th in yards per carry allowed. So if you ask yourself, first of all, how important is that? And why is that happening? It's extremely important, and it's why you're playing with the lead most of the time because the other team can't get the running game going, right? Therefore, they fall behind. You jump out to an early lead, and now you're playing not a prevent defense, but more of a cover 3 look to where you're keeping everything in front of you, and that's why these teams are having to nickel and dime you underneath with the passing game. They can't go to the run. They can't go over the top. They're having to use every inch of the field through the passing game to score on you, and that's how you end up beating the Bengals by 2 scores, and that's why you're sitting at the top of the NFC North and number 2 seed in the NFC overall. Again, That happens because of Rashan Gary's 16 stops. That also you take into consideration that he's hitting home with the 4.5 sacks, although his pressure percentage is down. What that's telling you is they're being very strategic with how they play him in the run game. Micah Parsons, whole different ball game. They're not telling Micah, hey, really want you to be cautious, be aware of the run. They're telling Micah, I don't care if three guys are blocking you, get your ass after the quarterback, right? That's what they're doing there. And Gary is more of a, hey, run stop approach. It just so happens that the sacks have come early for Rashan Gary as opposed to Micah Parsons, who's being held all day long, obviously. So, with that being said, I do not want to see Rashan Gary traded. I don't. And I want to know what everybody thinks in the chat. Everybody comment right here, whether you're watching this live or later. Let me know, what would it take for you to trade a player at Rashan Gary's caliber, okay? And I don't want to ask you guys a question I'm not willing to answer myself. What would it take? It's tough because I know people can say, man, if they'll give up 3 first-round picks, I'd give up Rashan Gary. Goody would probably run that trade card up, right? He would take that trade in a heartbeat. The reason I'm hesitant on even a trade like that is because the Super Bowl window's open, guys. We've got a recipe now for success, right? You've got a run-stopping edge defender on the opposite, who's, by the way, hitting home with sacks, leading the team, on the opposite side of a demon in a speed rusher in Micah Parsons. You've got a good rotation when healthy of LVN. You've got our boy Devontae Wyatt, who was off to a strong start. Hopefully, we'll have him back either this week or next week. I would imagine at a minimum of next week, unless he has a setback with the knee injury. You'll get, like I said, LVN back sooner rather than later as well. You've got Warren Brinson, who many people aren't talking about. He had a hell of a game against Cincinnati, helping fill in some of those. I think he had 20 snaps filling in for Devontae Wyatt. Why do I mention all this? Your offense is playing great. Your defense is playing great. You've got a nice balance of stopping the run and strategically stopping the pass, pinning your ears back when you need to. You got a 3-year window to win a Super Bowl. That's what we're looking at here. If you trade away Rashan Gary, I don't see how anyone can look at the numbers, look at the tape, and convince themselves that you're closer to winning a Super Bowl. It's going to push you further away from winning a Super Bowl, but there's enough assets involved. I can see how people would make the argument to want to trade Rashan Gary for a boatload of picks. Now, would the 49ers give up 3 first-round picks? I think they'd be silly to do that, right? Depends on how desperate they are. So for me, it's a strong no for me, but if they were to come to the table with 2 first-round picks and say, we want Rashan Gary for 2 first-round picks, now keep in mind that's 2 late first-round picks. Maybe if they throw a 3-tech in there as well, and now you're gambling on Lucas Van Ness being the guy and Baron Sorrell taking another step, maybe you can work some kind of deal out like that. I don't know. But on the surface, I think it's highly, highly, highly unlikely you could put a deal together for Rashan Gary. That's just me personally. I want to know. You guys let me know in the chat, as Justin in here, Justin Curry says in the chat, for a starting offensive lineman, there may be a piece that you'd say, yeah, I'd be willing to do that. I'm nowhere near wanting to get rid of Rashan Gary. It's just everything is working. So, and here's the other thing, injuries are going to happen. Let me give you a doom and gloom scenario, right? And we try to stay positive on this particular program. But imagine you trade away Rashan Gary for, let's say, 2 first-round picks. They sweeten the pot, and it's a pretty good deal. You traded him away for 2 first-round picks, and then all of a sudden Micah Parsons blows his knee out. Good luck. Right now, you're way back to square one. So, again, I don't think this lines up for them to want to trade Rashan Gary, because also, as Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst have always said, you can never have enough pass rushers. So it's going to take a lot to pry him away. Beyond the on-field impact, Gary's contract makes him a valuable asset for the Green Bay. Signed through 2027 on a 4-year extension from 2023, Gary earned $17.25 million this season, with scheduled salaries of $19.5 million in 26, $22.5 million in 27. These figures are reasonable for a player of his caliber. Isn't it funny that when you ask AI, hey man, do a search, let me know what's the value in Rashan. This is what I did here, guys, putting this together. This is, I proofread it and make sure, okay, yeah, it kind of lines up with how I feel as well. Isn't it amazing how when you ask AI, hey, run this down, run the numbers down, they come away like this is good value for Rashan Gary's contract. You had these knuckleheads on the 4-letter network in Milwaukee literally just a month and a half ago still claiming that Rashan Gary's overpaid. And boy, they were excited about getting Micah Parsons. And I am too, don't get me wrong. But when you got Micah Parsons, who's got 2.5 sacks, Gary's got 4.5, all of a sudden they stop complaining about not hitting home, right? All of a sudden it's not an issue. So these guys are going to play off each other well. It's so important. Again, it's great value with his contract. Trading Gary now would disrupt the Packers' competitive timeline, especially as they aim to contend in the NFC, while the emergence of first-round pick Lucas Van Ness could eventually prompt discussions about Gary's future. That scenario is far from imminent. So again, when you look at the contract here from Spot Track on Rashan Gary, this year his cap hit is $25.7 million. Next year, it only jumps $2.3 million, guys. Only $2.3 million does it increase next year to $28 million. You understand that this year's cap hit, Rashan Gary, is less. It's actually, I think it's less than half of Micah Parsons' average annual value, depending on which figures you think are most important. This is great value for the way Rashan Gary's playing. Now, you'll notice the dead cap this year is 34.9. Let's fast forward to next year. When it jumps to $28 million in cap hit, look at the dead cap attached over here on the far right, $17 million. What does that mean? You could cut ties with Rashan Gary before the 2026 season and free up $11 million. So now you got to step back and realistically ask yourself, if they're willing to give you 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick, right, and they trade for Gary, and now you free up $11 million in cap space, pick up a boatload of picks, you could see how now we got a conversation to have, right? Again, I'm still on team keep Gary. I think it's best for the Super Bowl window, but I can understand why a team will pull the trigger there. And then, of course, in 2027, it's the last year of his contract. He turns 30 years old. So I don't see a scenario where he's playing for the Packers in 2028, right? And here's the thing: if a team is willing to give up high draft capital, I'm just throwing draft picks around, guys. I don't have any sources saying they're willing to give up 2 firsts. Hell, their best offer might be a third. In that case, absolutely not, right? But if they're willing to give up a significant amount, and man, Goody loves to get rid of players 1 year early, 1 year too early rather than 1 year too late. This kind of lines up with the timeline there as well, if the compensation is good enough, because in 2027, the cap hit was $31 million. The dead cap attached is only $8.5 million. So I kind of feel like it makes the most sense. Keep Gary through 2026, see how he looks going into 27. And then in 2027, if he's still looking like a solid player, let's look to convert some of that $21 million in base salary over to signing bonus and reduce his cap number from the $31 million cap hit down to somewhere between 20, 25 million. Keep it reasonable. He gets some guaranteed money on the front side, put that money in his pocket. We get to keep a great player through the final year of his contract. You could even tack on voidable years and continue to spread that Super Bowl window out, right? But isn't it funny that Gary's under contract for 25, 26, 27? What have we talked about all year? There's a 3-year Super Bowl window that's currently open. So that's how the contract lays out. Now let's go along to, could Kingsley and Igbare be an option? If the Packers were to entertain a trade, Kingsley and Igbare presents a more realistic candidate. Currently 4th in the edge rusher rotation and in the final year of his rookie contract, Enigbare could be expendable. Moving him would also create opportunities for rookie Barron Sorrell to see increased playing time. However, complications arise with Lucas Van Ness' recent foot injury sustained against the Cincinnati Bengals, which could sideline him for an unspecified period. Now, unless news is broke while I'm live here and I don't know yet, I don't expect LVN to go on the 4-week IR. So that would tell me 1 to 3 weeks is probably that injury, right? Not overly concerned, but if you trade in Igbare, you're losing depth there, and you've really got to lean on Barron Sorrell, which in my opinion, it kind of feels like early indications are they're already favoring Barron Sorrell over Igbare a little bit, right? So again, I feel a whole lot better about trading Enigbare than Rashan Gary. I think everyone or most people would agree there as well. If he returns to full health, LVN returns to full health before the trade deadline, the Packers might feel more comfortable parting with Enigbare. When you look at Enigbare's contract, again, he is in the final year of his contract. His cap hit's only $3.4 million, but this is the final year of his deal. And what does that mean? Are they going to extend him? If he doesn't get any offers on the open market, I wouldn't be surprised if they want to bring him back, right? But if the market heats up a little bit and somebody's willing to pay Enigbare $7 million a year, something like that, I don't think the Packers would be interested, because you would be overpaying for a backup player that's going to be on your bench or playing in a rotational aspect. You'd be overpaying for him, and now Barron Sorrell's getting less reps again. right? So to me, this makes the most sense if they could get a 5th-round pick for Enigbari, something like that, right? That makes a lot of sense. So there you go. Again, that's just kind of a quick little breakdown. Strategic considerations. The Packers must trade carefully in any potential deal with the 49ers, a formidable NFC rival. Strengthening San Francisco's roster could backfire unless the trade return is overwhelmingly favorable. What we talked about, multiple firsts or something like that. For now, Rashan Gary remains a cornerstone of Green Bay's defense, and any trade discussions are more likely to center around Enigbari. So there you go, guys. That's all we know on the trade rumor front at the moment. You guys let me know in the comments right here, right down below. Comment. Let me know, what would you be willing to trade Gary for? Is Gary off limits for a trade for you? We want to hear from you guys in the comments. So make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell icon so you're notified when we go live, like later on this evening. If you guys aren't doing anything, 6 p.m. Central. I know many people have been reaching out. They've been watching the Brewers game on mute, right? Whenever they're playing live. I know they're not playing tonight, but while the Brewers are playing, they're watching the game on mute and they're actually listening to the show, hanging out. So feel free to do that as well. So come check it out. 6 p.m. Central. We'll be breaking down the tape. We'll be showing you what happened. Why did it happen against the Cincinnati Bengals? Got a lot of really, really cool clips in there. We're going to show you. Jordan Love's balling out. Matthew Golden had a breakout game. Josh Jacobs ran wild with 150 all-purpose yards. You seen LVN get a sack. It was a lot of fun to break down. And we had a couple negative plays that we'll explain. Hey, here's what went wrong on these plays. Who's to blame? What broke down in the scheme? It's just all an opportunity for us to, in the middle of the week when no football is happening, let's just sit down, crack open a cold one, and watch the previous game together type thing. So everybody have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. We'll see you this evening. And again, this is PTA. My name's Clayton. Go Pack, go.
Here we go.
We're out.
Bye, guys.